Hope everybody's doing well. I just got off the phone with a client who just did a cycling and a running test with us. And I wanted to share some information that is pretty important that we talked about that I hear from a lot of different athletes and, exercising individuals when it comes to, testing and what they're used to, what they've heard in the past, all the way to, why their heart rate's doing something specific, or why, you're running 3 different durations or, distances over 3 different days, and why, your shorter distance on day 3 might be harder than your day 1 distance that's a lot longer. So, there's many different ways that we can apply this, but what I want to talk about and go through some slides of just some explanation for you guys. So what we have here initially is, the one thing that I don't like is that it says versus. Okay, so you have your anaerobic system and your aerobic system. Okay, both of these systems are working together when you exercise. Okay, it's just how much energy are we getting, or how efficient is one energy system working compared to the other. Okay, so that anaerobic system, that's where we're going to get that lactic acid. That aerobic system is going to be more of the oxygen to the working muscle. Okay, but point being, they are working together. All right, it's not like one starts and the other one completely stops. Okay, so when you talk about training zones, this is where our training zone builder comes into play, because we can find that gray area and really optimize how you're training. All right, so let's go to the next one here. So this is an example of, in the past, at a couple of places I used to work at, we used to do just your gradual step test, right? So every few minutes, we're going to increase intensity, and then we're going to take a sample. We're going to increase intensity after a couple minutes and keep going. Well, the downside to that is, as intensity increases, lactic acid is going to be produced, more lactic acid, right? But one of the key things, and then this is what we see here, right? So at 150 watts, 200, 250, 300, you see this slight incline, okay, of lactic acid production. And then you see that giant spike, which correlates with heart rate, which is, to be expected, okay? But, one of the things that I want to talk about, here's a great example. We had this athlete that was running at the same pace over 30 minutes. Okay. And initially we see this giant heart rate spike. Okay. That's your anaerobic system that starts working, is that heart rate jumps, and then you start to see it drop back down, level out, and then it starts to increase again, which is normal. Okay. As time goes on. I'm not going to get into detail about this specific athlete, but one of the things I want to get across here is, at the 5-minute mark, they were way more efficient than that 1-2 minute mark, right? So as we start exercise, that anaerobic system kicks in. Okay, aerobic system hasn't really warmed up yet. And so we're producing more lactic acid, that heart rate's higher, and then we start to settle down. That aerobic system starts working a little more efficiently, getting oxygen to the working muscles, using that lactic acid as energy and fuel. And you see that heart rate level off, which also is that lactic acid leveling off. Okay, so one of the common misconceptions is, when you go do a step test and they're only giving you 3 minutes or 4 minutes per intensity, we're not able to see that 5 to 10 to 12 minutes where that heart rate might level off. Your aerobic system might start working a little more efficiently. All right, we're just cutting it off, increasing intensity, which inevitably is going to increase lactic acid production. Okay, so you have to give your body some time, right? So this is the new science. This is what we're talking about. Here's another example. Okay, so you see this heart rate spike, and then it starts to level off. Well, if we took that lactic acid sample almost immediately, or a few minutes in, we would never realize that, hey, as time goes on, you are going to level out and become more efficient. All right, so this is why you have to be careful with old school protocols. Okay, we're finding so much out, so many more new things out. Okay, so here's a more in-depth image, and I'll go into this in detail another time for those of you that want it. But what's cool here is you're going to see the different systems at play through just a 4 or 5 minute time span. Okay, so imagine 12 minutes, what this is going to look like. But look, if we just cut it off right here at that 2.5 minute mark, we're not going to really see all the information that we want to see. All right, so this is from the company that we work with here, and they had a great example. And what we're looking at here, okay, and this is a swimmer. So they're doing intervals, but they have a set recovery time. Okay, and that set recovery time, what we can see, it's a constant power set recovery time. That recovery is not long enough for them. So if you're doing interval training and you're not giving yourself enough recovery, and this is why when we do testing, we focus on intensity, duration, and recovery, efficiency of recovery before you start another interval. Okay, so what we're seeing here is if you're not training the right way when it comes to interval training, your power, right? So the energy release is going to start to decrease, which is what we see throughout each intensity. Okay. So biggest take home from this slide, what I want to get across is you can't just do a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio when you're working on interval training. Okay, you have to give yourself more time for recovery as the intervals progress. Okay, so you can see this 14 versus a 2, you can see how much less power is being produced because we're not recovering efficiently. You're not giving your energy system enough time to recover. Okay, so last one here, touching on that recovery. So when you have 3 different types of individuals, you can see that rest, the end of exercise here, and then the rate of recovery. So an elite athlete is recovering pretty quickly all the way back down to the resting level. Healthy control, recovering as well. And then we have our obese individual, which isn't as efficient at recovery and it's taking a little more time. So if you're out there with your training partner, that you could have very similar body types, but different levels of recovery, this is where we're going to see a big difference. Okay, so when you apply that back to the intervals, here's going to be a problem, right? This is where we're going to see a problem. Okay, so you have to make sure that you are giving yourself enough recovery time, but also this is why it's important to measure how efficient you are at recovery so that we can plug that into the zones, plug that into your performance projection. Okay, so keep up to date with the protocols, keep up to date with the science. It is changing, but this is why having a human performance expert to explain all of this to you and break down your metrics and your data is extremely important. Okay, don't get caught in guesstimations or estimations. Okay, all of this recovery data can be changed through training. Okay, and that's what's super important, what we want to look at. Okay. All right, let me see if I can show you another example here. All right, so metabolic report wise, this is what's cool is you're going to get a lot of data here. VLA max, threshold, your fat max, carb max, but we're going to see these load characteristics. Okay, so your fat, carbohydrate content, lactic acid production. And then when we scroll all the way to the bottom, this is what's awesome about our performance development. So we can see over time certain metrics that need to change and are dropping and certain metrics that are rising. Okay, so the VLA max, this individual, it's increasing, which is awesome because he's training. He went from a long endurance race to needing to train for a shorter race. So we need to push those levels of lactic acid. But what you can see here is those energy systems are working together. Okay, so again, it's not just one shuts off and then the other one kicks back into gear. Okay, and here are his zones, which is awesome. But so please reach out if you have any questions about any of this stuff. And again, just remember the importance of being able to utilize all aspects of your metrics, of your physiology to really tap in to what can project you further within your performance. Okay.